She founded the Crush Your Money Goals Academy for those overlooked and underestimated by traditional financial services. Get ready to gain tangible actions you can take back to your organization to promote financial wellness for yourself, your team, and the diverse communities that you serve. Here to help us do that is Bernadette Joy. Welcome.
Yay! Yay! Thank you so much. All right, it's a little bit of a golf clap. It's the last session. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. We made it. Now, I have been known to be the closer because, especially after lunch, because after lunch, I don't know about y'all, but those cookies were good. And I got a little sleepy. So I'm here to wake us up, get some energy back before we get to the rest of our days. And I want to make sure that when we leave today, we're not just like, oh, wow, that was a great talk. That was inspiring. We want to do some real stuff. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Awesome. Oh, yes. Clap. By the way, I heard some of you murmuring, what? She paid off $300,000 of debt? How did she do that? We can talk about that later. FAQs later. Ask me this question. So I am Bernadette Joy, and I am here to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is crushing the wealth gap. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't think the wealth gap exists? No, right? We all know something's not right. Something's not right with money. But how do we, as people in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, make a difference in this? And my personal journey actually started almost 10 years ago when I, get this, was an HR professional. I'm a recovering HR professional, guys. And I became a millionaire, right? So if any of you are like, oh my God, HR, guess what? You can pay off debt, you can change your life, you can make a difference in this world. I honestly believe that. But this started for me 10 years ago, one day when I got a call as an HR business partner at one of the banks, not one here. I was in New York City, this is like 2010, and I get a call from a woman with a Filipino accent. And I was like, Mom? Is that you? No, it wasn't my mom. It was actually an employee at my company. And long story short, she said, I think I'm underpaid. I was like, I mean, probably, but do we know for sure, right? And I was like 26 years old at the time. And I said, well, let me do a little digging. And so I went and did a little digging. And I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm like, oh, the world, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I found out that she and a white man that she worked with, were doing the exact same job. I even went to her boss and said, what is the difference between what she does and what he does? And he says, nothing. They do the exact same job. They are covering for each other. And actually, sometimes she does it a little bit better. Come to find, she got paid half of what he got paid. And so, me being, you'll find out that I'm a little feisty, right? So I did a little more digging, and I did a whole sweep of that entire job family to see what was going on. And I found that when I stacked people in that job across all of our offices, there was almost a near perfect correlation between race, gender, and pay. The white guy was at the top, and the women of the color at the bottom, and there was 100% difference. I said, this ain't right. Something's got to change. So I took it to my boss, who then took it to her boss, who took it to legal, and the response was, you need to burn those documents. No one can see those. And I was like, oh no. Well, that ain't gonna happen, right? However, I found that it is really hard sometimes to have those tough conversations, even when some of our amazing panelists told us we need to look at the data. Even when the data is staring us straight in the face, sometimes people are like, sweep it under the rug. But I gathered from the conversations that we had today Like Precious was up here, like preaching that. I loved some of the things that you guys were saying. Patrice, she said the backstory matters. I suspect that all of you came here not just to have free lunch. Y'all came here because you actually want to do something today. So that is what we're going to talk about. So a little backstory about me. Hello. This way. Try again. Ah, there we are. Okay. So, as you already heard, I am Bernadette, and so a little bit of my backstory, you heard that already. First generation Filipino-American. My husband immigrated from the Philippines. I am 37 years old, and I have enough money to retire today. Oh, someone's like, oh, that's pretty good. Oh, yeah, thank you. You can clap for that. You can clap for that. I'm going to brag on that because I had to learn a lot of things on my own. And those things helped me to become a debt-free millionaire. So I show up today not only because I am passionate about this topic, because I am talking from a lived experience. And oftentimes we hear from people who learn stuff, but we don't often hear from people who live it, right? And so many of you in this room have lived this experience. I am not the only person who has a great backstory to tell. And I encourage all of you to tell your backstories in addition to the data, right? So aside from doing engagements like this, I have also been a DEI presenter at places like LPL Financial, like TIAA, places like Neurogym and Grant Thornton. I've talked at Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Schools. And the thing that is common across all of these places is that there are not enough conversations about money. Because let's be honest, we show up to work, why? To get paid. Yet we keep pretending like that's not why we're here, right? So my goal today is for you to build and create an action plan to upgrade your DEI programs with wealth building specifically for your women and communities of color and for all of the diversity that you serve. Now, everyone take a second, go into your packets. There is a workbook there. Go grab that workbook right now. This is going to be what I call a worth shop. In my group, we have a saying. It's called make worth a verb. Working is trying to make sure that you have enough money for today. Worthing is making sure we have enough money and resources and legacy and data, not just for today, but for the future and for the rest of our lives. Does that sound good? Now, 2 favors I'm going to ask of you, because it's been a long day. Number 1, say yes if you can commit to me that you can pay attention, look here, focus on your paper for the next 45 minutes. I know there's a lot of emails and things that are catching your attention. Can you commit for the next 45 minutes to just focus on this? Say yes. Yes. All right. Number 2, I'm going to ask you to write stuff down. Oh, I almost cursed. I'm from New York City. It's very hard for me not to do that. Stuff down, write stuff down. You heard that I have 3 degrees. One of those was an expensive, stupidly expensive psychology degree. And the one thing that I learned from psychology is that our brain sucks for storage. It is meant for processing. So the best way that you can bring back tangible actions to your organizations is to write it down, to share it with your colleagues, and if you want to take copies of this workbook, I have a link for you that you'll get in your email that you can take this workbook and print it out and share it with all of your colleagues. So can you commit to me? Say yes if you're going to write stuff down. Yes, okay. So, Fernando said, let's have some courageous conversations. Let's have a courageous conversation right now. And I was guilty of this when I was an HR person. If you asked your diverse employees to evaluate your current DEI initiatives, are you confident that you would get an A+? Everyone's like, oh, like some of you are not even thinking it in your head. You're literally like, oh no, we're not going to get an A+. That is okay. They say the first step is admitting, right? Here's the truth. You're not getting an A+ for lack of effort. I know this as sitting in your shoes, right? You have the right intention, you have the right heart, but sometimes, let's be honest, we don't get the resources that we need. Am I right? We don't get the support that we need. Am I right? Even though we are trying our hardest. So I want you to take a moment right now and give yourself a moment of grace to say, okay, we're not getting an A+, but it's not entirely my fault. That is okay. That is okay to hold other people accountable, not just yourself. Let me ask you this. Do you feel like your current DEI initiatives are changing lives? There wasn't an immediate no. There's like some, could be, maybe. Here's the truth. DEI initiatives can change people's lives. And that is the major goal. A lot of people think that I come here just to talk about money. The real purpose that I'm here and that I talk about money and why I became a debt-free millionaire is because ultimately wealth is about time. You are truly wealthy if you have time, the time to go spend it with your family, the time to go take care of your health, the time to do the things that you want to do. And so I'm asking you, are your DEI initiatives asking people to take more time to do stuff that isn't really pushing the needle forward? Or are your DEI initiatives helping people build time wealth? This is a quotation I got. Baylor was there. I went to a seminar last month. I talked in front of 1,500 other personal finance folks. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say to these people that they haven't already heard. And I talked to this group about flowing your worth. That's one of my big topics, flow your worth. We talk about know your worth, right? We hear that all the time, but we don't often hear about how to actually grow our worth, right? Our net worth and our self-worth. But I take it a step further to say we need to help our employees flow their worth. How do we make it easier? How do we make it simpler? How do we make it feel like it's taking less energy? And this man came up to me and said, oh my God. He actually came up to me afterwards and gave me a big hug. He said, you changed my woman's life with what you said. And sometimes it just requires someone else. And he said, I've been telling her the same thing, but how many of you guys listen to your husbands or wives when they say something? He said, okay, good. I'll let your wife know that you said that, right? Sometimes we need to hear it from someone that we relate to, that actually understands what we are going through to hear it the way that we need to hear it, right? So today we're going to talk through the 5 steps of my CRUSH framework. My company is called Crush Your Money Goals because the 5 steps that I typically walk people through happen to spell out the word crush. So we're going to walk through CRUSH, and you are going to commit to writing things down that are going to move the needle forward. So let's talk about the C in crush. The C stands for clear out performative and non-value add activities. Why do I say this? Because all of us have limited time. All of us have limited resources. And so we need to do an audit today to say, okay, looking at our DEI initiatives, are there initiatives that we don't have tangible value on or we can't trace it back? If the answer is no, it is okay to lovingly release those activities. You can admit that one, I thought it was going to be a home run and it didn't work as I thought. It's okay to let it go. A common thing that I work with my one-on-one clients is around budgeting. People always ask me, how did you pay off $300,000 of debt? I got in a budget. Well, I don't have time to do a budget. That is the number one reason people tell me that they don't have time to do a budget. So I said, well, what else are you doing right now that's not helping you grow your net worth? Get rid of those things first, and then we can talk about adding time in to do your budget. Same thing works with DEI stuff. And so often we have these things that I like to call random acts of diversity. I think we know what we mean by this, right? We're doing things with the umbrella of diversity, but have we also, to some of the points of our panelists, also talked about equity and inclusion and belonging, not just the diversity aspect? And are we having tangible ways that we can say that this is moving the needle, this activity is changing people's lives? So, I get this question all the time. Here's a real life example of what happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a major company here in Charlotte, and the only way that I've been able to get into companies is because one of their employees was one of my clients, and they advocated for me to come, and they said, this woman changed my finances forever. Other employees need to hear this. So one of my great clients asked me to come to her company and share more about what I do. And the lady said, the head of HR said, well, we already have someone who comes in. He's a 401k guy, and every quarter he comes in and he brings donuts and he tells us about our 401k. How many of you guys have the 401k guy? How many of you understood what he said? Right. That is a performative act. Bringing someone in who ultimately is explaining something that nobody understands is not moving the needle forward. And so I asked her, I said, with all due respect, how much have you paid him? And she said, well, nothing. Well, then you got what you paid for. So, how am I different, or how are other DEI initiatives different from the 401k guy? Financial wellness and building the wealth of communities of color and women requires actionable framework built on habits. And it needs to be not just about the money part, it needs to be about the mental aspect of it. Because how many people in this room have ever stressed about money? Right. If money was just about the math, we would all be debt-free millionaires, wouldn't we? Right? The hard part of crushing the wealth gap is all of the stuff that's related to the psychology behind the money and not just the math. And here's the kicker. If someone is doing something for free for you, chances are they're trying to sell you something. So, if you have someone coming in to your organization with the free donuts, it's because there's a sales pitch on the back. And most employees are pretty attuned to that, and so that's why they don't pay attention. So what can we do instead? Let's talk about the R in crush. Reverse into one goal. I want everyone to take a minute right now, a literal minute. I have my watch here, and I want you to go to your workbook, and in the R section, I want you to write, how can your organization increase access to wellness programs and education for your employees, particularly around wealth? Just brainstorm it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be amazing. It could just be as simple as like, okay, we haven't even brought in the 401k guy. Maybe that's where we start, right? Take a minute right now. What programs or education do you think your employees are looking for? And where do you think you can find them? Now, if you wrote some things, keep writing. If you're not done, don't worry, we're not moving on yet. I want you to then go back to that first page, because anything you wrote is going to take either more time, energy, resources, or all of the above. But all of you, I already know, have full plates. So something else has got to go to bring those things in. So I want you to go back to the first page and say, what is one thing that I can clear out right now in order to make space for this new thing that I want to bring in? By the way, it doesn't have to be at work. It can be personal, right? I had a lot of stuff going on this week, and my husband asked me yesterday, what's for dinner? And I was like, I don't care. You figure out what's for dinner. I'm trying to crush the wealth gap. Personal, professional, what can be cleared out of either your personal plate or your professional plate so that you can make room for activities that are actually going to move the needle? I see some people who haven't written anything down because they're like, I have to do all the things, especially some of the women. I'm looking around, you're like, but all of the things, they're mine. I have to do them. Can I get a brave volunteer too? What is one thing that you're willing to clear out to give some ideas to other folks in the room? What's one thing that you're going to clear out that's going to make some room for some new stuff? Yes. You said reduce or produce? Reduce. Okay, good. That's what I was hoping you would say. Not more social media, reduce some of the social media. That's a great example. And I'm going to show you in my slides one way that I've been able to reduce the work on doing all of the social media, all of the press for what I do. So we'll talk about that. What's another example? I'll ask for one more. What's another example? Y'all just going to keep everything on your plate? What's another example of something that you think you can clear out of your plate to make room for something better? Yes. I was waiting for someone to say that. Having the courageous conversation to say, I can't be the only DEI person. I can't be the only person who's carrying the weight of this. I need to hire help. And what I loved about what she said was she said, hire help. Not just ask for help, meaning like, oh, we're willing to pay someone to come and help, not just ask someone to do stuff for us, right? So I love that. Why do we need to crush the wealth gap? We talked a lot about data today. So here are some other stats that I want to remind you of. Only 39% of Americans can afford a $1,000 unexpected expense if it were to show up. That means that if that is happening to a good chunk of people, it's not. This is one of my gripes about personal finance. A lot of personal finance is like, well, if you're just eating avocado toast and drinking coffee, it's your fault that you broke. No. If 4 out of 10 people can't afford an unexpected thing that happened, there's something else going on. This is the one that makes me a little bit crazy. American women own 32 cents to every dollar owned by men. Now, oftentimes we talk about the wage gap, because the wage gap is the one that seems obvious, right, in our workplace. But let me ask you ladies, 32 cents to the dollar, do we need a third of what men need in order to live? No. If you like shoes and like hair and my earrings and stuff, you need more sometimes, okay? 32 cents to the dollar. We talked about the Great Resignation. 863,000 women left the workforce just in September 2020, just in that 1 month. And my first thought when I saw that stat was, those women are going to have a harder time getting to retirement. Because all of the time they're spending out of the workforce is money that they can no longer save or invest. And then here is one that strikes me every time I see it. The net worth of a typical white family is $171,000. But the typical net worth of a black family is $17,000. That is unacceptable in our time, in 2022. I have to say, it is unacceptable. But the good news, as employers and DEI professionals and people who actually care about moving the needle, you can make a difference in these numbers. I showed these numbers to my students in my Crush Your Money Goals Academy, most of whom are women and women of color, and I asked them, how do you feel when you see these numbers? The words that came up were pissed, unjust, frustrated, depressing. Those are also some of the feelings that people are coming into work with, because that is the real stuff that people are facing outside of their 9-to-5s. So what can we do differently? So one of the things that I really encourage all of you to think about, right, is your company willing to have a real conversation about money? And it doesn't have to be boring or stuffy or scary. It can be motivating. Most of the people who come out of my talk say, wow, I actually feel like I want to do something. I think I can actually fix this. Are people coming out of their talks with you feeling depressed or demotivated, or feeling like some of the things that people said why they left the workforce, because their wages were stagnant, because they didn't have job opportunities? Or are they coming out of these conversations feeling enlightened and empowered? So what can we actually do? Let's go to the U in your workbook. Everyone go to the U in your workbook. U stands for use assets within the organization. This is what we call, in business speak, right, the low-hanging fruit, right? What can we actually do with the assets that we already have? One of the hardest things about DEI is often, and people have said in this room, I am now responsible for DEI for the entire company, versus getting all of the people in your company and training them on DEI. Right? So look at your talent team right now. Look at your recruitment team. Look at your employee benefits. Look at your learning and development teams. Are they savvy about these stats? Do they really understand what the wealth gap looks like? And are there initiatives helping to close it or helping to widen it? So let me give you an example that I came across recently. I had a company who asked me to come and speak for Women's History Month. By the way, Women's History Month is March. Financial Literacy Month is April. And then Asian American Pacific Islander Month is May. So those are my three busiest. That's like my Christmas, right? I'm going all the places, right? And they asked me to come, and they said, our concern is that you're going to teach women about negotiating. I'm sorry, sir, because it was a sir. Sir, you're concerned that I'm going to tell your women how to advocate for themselves? My immediate thought, what's your immediate thought? I'm curious. When you hear that, what's your thought? Huh? He's afraid. The question is, what is he afraid of? Right? Are you willing to open up the can of worms with the people who are producing these initiatives and ask them, well, how are you impacted by this first? I will confess, true story, I moved to Charlotte because I was living in New York City, and my company at that time, as an HR business partner, told me that I need to go deliver the annual enrollment most boring presentation ever, right? Like the benefits package, right? I was 25. I didn't even know what half of the stuff was. I'm like, I don't know what a deductible is, but I guess I'm the person who's going to go tell everybody, right? And I ended up moving to Charlotte because I was in New York City, and I was like, man, this place is clean. There's no garbage. And I just moved. And now I've been here 8 years. And I remember delivering that presentation, and I look back now and I'm like, I can't believe they sent that version of Bernadette to talk about benefits when she didn't know what she was talking about. Now, when I coach women one-on-one, guess what they're asking me to do every October, November? Walk them through their benefits plans. Except now I know what I'm talking about. I can explain to them, well, this is why you should get your HSA, and this is why you should look at maxing out your 401k. And one of my services that I provide to all of my clients is to walk through all of your benefits to make sure that you are maximizing it. Why is that not happening within the company themselves? Why are they coming to someone externally to ask that? Right? So take a moment right now and write down within the organizations, who needs more support, your talent, your recruitment, your employee benefits, to understand how they can close the wealth gap? How can you help them understand how to connect the wealth gap with what they do? Take a minute, write that down. The clock is not working. And then I want you to take it a step further. I want you to write down the name of at least 3 employees within your organization, 3 specific people who you consider to be assets at your organization, that you would personally love to help them close their own wealth gap in some shape or form. So what does that mean? It could mean something as, if you're their manager, then great. You have a direct way to do that. But if it's a peer, if it's a friend, if it's a mentor, who within the organization do you consider an asset that you would personally love to help them close their wealth gap? Raise your hand if you wrote at least one person down. Great. Why do I ask you to write a specific person's name? Because when I say women and communities of color, people are like, oh, yeah, like I get it. Is there an actual person in your life that matters to you at your workplace that you know has a wealth gap in some shape or form that you know you can help? Then it actually starts to matter to us personally, right? Here is a testimonial from one of the clients that I've had recently, TIAA. They said, we had received overwhelming support. We had 550 people show up to your talk. It was the most people we've had come to a BRG talk ever. You know what my topic was? Crush your money goals. Do you know what TIAA does? You don't know, they do retirement planning. You would think that they would have had someone internally, right, to come and talk about this topic. But when they saw the way that I talk about it, they said, wow, you're talking about a way that people understand, that they relate to, and they actually feel motivated. So that leads me to ask you to look at the S in crush. So everyone look at S in crush. And it stands for, clicker is not working again. Spend, oh, that was a cute family. It's okay. There we go. Spend on outside resources. Now, oftentimes as HR professionals, we're like, well, we got to do all this stuff. We got to make it work with what we were given to us. And so then we end up putting out programs that are not as beneficial as they could be versus bringing someone in who's already an expert at that thing, who can show you how to do it, can even teach you how to do it within an organization, and then leave if you want them to. The one key thing is there must be a dedicated budget for this. Every time I have a company come and ask to work with me, my first question is, what is the budget for this? And 9 times out of 10, they skirt the answer to that question. We need to literally put our money where our mouth is. If we want to help close the wealth gap, then we have to spend money to close the wealth gap. And sometimes it will require us to bring people from outside. So here are 3 ideas I want to give you to think about how you might bring someone from outside. Number 1 is have an employee listening strategy with someone external from the organization. Because let's be honest, sometimes the workplace is not a safe space for women of color to talk openly. And I will hear more about your company sometimes than what they'll tell you, because I don't work in those companies and people feel like they can. So are you willing to bring someone from the outside to get some real, honest feedback? Number 2, looking at your employee wellness programs, right? 401k is just the tip of the iceberg. Guesses, why did those 863,000 women leave the workforce? What do you think is the primary reason? Childcare, absolutely. So looking at your employee wellness programs, does it include ways that will help women afford childcare? Guess what, guys? I am child-free by choice. You know why? Because kids are expensive, right? But I work with so many women who say, I have to choose between taking care of my kids or retiring. It doesn't feel like I can have both. So are you providing ways that will help make childcare more affordable for your employees? And then lastly, bringing in paid expert speakers. And I say paid because there's a lot of people who want to talk, right? But the reason that they're paid is because, like me, I practiced, I have data, I have clients, I have done this hundreds of times at this point. This is not the first time that I'm on stage, right? So when you pay someone to come in as an expert on a topic, then you will get your money's worth, right? So are you willing to bring in paid speakers? Now, here is the beauty of bringing in a paid speaker, is that, and this is where I really want you to do some due diligence. I want you to challenge them on what you're paying for, right? So when I go speak at a place, I give them exactly what it is that they're looking at. I'm like, this is the topic that I'm going to talk about. These are the results that are going to happen out of it. Here are all the materials you're going to get. I'm also going to give you the marketing material so you know exactly what to do. You don't have to come up with the email that goes out to your 1,000 employees. I will provide you the survey. I will also give your employees access to my educational content for free. That is worth paying for than just asking someone to come up and talk for 45 minutes, right? So it is okay, as an employer, I want you to challenge your speakers and say, well, how am I going to get the return on investment for what I'm paying you for? Prime example, I spoke at a company a couple weeks ago, and one of their employees decided to sign up with me as a one-on-one coaching client. In 3 weeks, she has paid off $18,000. In 3 weeks. They got their money back from that one employee alone. So think about, how can you challenge the people you're going to pay to ask them, how are they going to produce results? And what should these programs entail? These are the things I want you to ask. It's okay for you to challenge people. What are the clear, tangible participant results of people who show up to your programs? What is the data that is backing what you say? So in my case, right, Crush is my thing, right? Crush is what goes through all of my programs. But I've had 2,500 people come through these programs, and people have paid off cars and student loans. And most of my clients now are on pace to max out their 401ks. Those are tangible results. And are they tested and are they proven? And are they led by not someone who's just recognized with the letters and the degrees, but someone who's actually lived what they are feeling? So let's talk about this last piece in Crush, H, my favorite. Hustle smarter, not harder. I know. We were all told that if we work really hard and we do a good job, then we will be fine. We will be wealthy. But I figured out through my personal finance journey that hustling hard got me burned out. So instead, I figured out how to hustle smarter. And so how can you hustle smarter? Here's a couple of other ideas for you. Number one, how can you increase the efficiency of the staff or the technology that you already have? Such a small, low-hanging fruit. How many of you right now use scheduling tools like Calendly or Acuity, right, to schedule appointments? I saw Toy up at, okay, the two people that I know in the room use it. The vast majority of people don't. How much time do we waste just trying to schedule meetings? That app costs $10 a month. Simple little tools that you can use to get back time for your team so that they can focus on bigger ticket items can go a long way. I love what, who was it? Was it Precious that said it? Said, oh, maybe, I don't remember who said it. It's stuck in my mind. Said, you're trying to go an inch wide instead of a mile deep. Maybe it was Patrice. So, it was Patrice? That was a really good quote. A lot of these DEI programs are trying to go wide instead of deep. Let's bring in all of the experts. Let's bring in everybody on every kind of topic. Versus, if you get a great response on a topic, instead of saying, okay, that was great, we did that for that month, bring it back again. Precious said they're going to spend 2 months on just pronouns. And to be honest, 2 months is not enough, right? In the grand scheme of like the history of why we need to even talk about pronouns. But 2 months is more than I've seen any other company do. Go deep when you get good feedback on something instead of moving on right to the next thing. And then number 3, repurpose quality content that you can use for both internal and corporate press. So what do I mean by that? Sometimes we get those good gems, just like I did right now. Patrice said, go deep instead of going wide. And I just repurposed it right in front of you. Like, that's a great thing. I'm going to reuse it. Here's an example of what I do in my own company. So to the point of social media, right? All of my business comes from social media. And here is where one of the topics that I get asked most frequently, how many of you have had aging parents and you've had to have some responsibility around it? Who taught you how to do that? Nobody, right? Like, nobody has this conversation about, hey, I'm in the sandwich generation. I've got people who are the next generation. I've got people above me in the previous generation, and I have to somehow take care of everybody, including myself. I consistently got that feedback, so I wrote an article in Time magazine about how I resented my immigrant parents for not teaching me about money, and here's why I was wrong. That became one of my most popular topics, and then I turned it into a podcast. And now I'm bringing an expert, because I'm not the expert on it, because I failed miserably at it, and I'm bringing an estate planner to come and talk to my students about it. I took that topic and I went deep. So, in your notes, I want you to take the last minute right now. Let's recap. Where can you clear out performative and non-value add activities so that you can make room for helping us crush the wealth gap? In R, how can you start having the people in your organizations tying the wealth gap to the initiatives? You, who are the specific people that you care about on a human level that you can help close their personal wealth gap? S, are we willing to put our money where our mouth is and spend on resources outside of the organization where we are not experts? And H, what is one thing that we can create a little more efficiency in our teams so that we're hustling smarter and not harder? So I get a lot of questions. I'm totally willing to stay for as long as required if you want to ask me questions afterwards. And I just want to leave you with this. I am so appreciative that you all showed up today, because showing up is 80% of the battle. And I already know that you care about it because you showed up today. And so I really want all of us to think about what is one way that we are not just going to leave this conference and say, well, that was great. I'm going to commit to doing something different for myself and for the people around me. And if you're interested in having a conversation with me, you can find me. hello@crushyourmoneygoals.com is my email. I am super active on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you there. And I really hope that all of you are excited about the things that you're going to do to help all of us become independently wealthy. So thank you.